Hello and welcome back to Black Guys on White Movies. I'm your host, Aaron Covington, along with
Other host, Aman Adumer.
and this week, the movie of the week we watched Dirty Harry,
Mm-hmm.
1971, a Clint Eastwood classic.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
big time old school cop movie. We got a
Mm-hmm.
lot to talk about with this one. Let me go ahead and read the synopsis to kind of kick us off here.
Great.
Then do Black Movie of the Week, because that's a great one too. Synopsis for Dirty Harry: when a man calling himself the Scorpio Killer menaces San Francisco, tough as nails police inspector Dirty Harry Callahan is assigned to track down the crazed psychopath.
Yeah. That
But
feels appropriate.
I I don't know if that really captures the movie.
How so?
Well, okay, the Scorpio Killer is menacing San Francisco, but that's kind of the second half of the movie. I mean, I think he does a killing early, but Dirty Harry is also just roughing up people kind of left and right early in the movie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then I think it's also interesting this tough as nails descriptor of him. Like, is that I don't know if that's what I would call it. He was Dirty Harry was as much a psychopath as the
Yes.
killer was, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I think he was a psychopath for sure. I don't think he was tough as nails. I think he was potentially had no neurons he can't feel emotion. That man cannot feel emotion at all or pain.
Right, right. That's what it really is.
Truly.
He's completely cut off from the world.
Mm-hmm.
But the Black Movie of the Week, um, I'm sure my guess is you haven't seen it,
Okay.
but we'll see. Because sometimes you do surprise. But the Black Movie of the Week is Shaft, also from 1971. The original Shaft. Crime lord hires Black Private Eye John Shaft to find and retrieve his kidnapped daughter. That's the plot for the first Shaft. Now, have you seen Shaft?
I have not seen the original Shaft. I think I saw the Sam Jackson Shaft, like
Right,
the whenever that came out, 2000s, 90s, the remake.
right.
But even then, Shaft resonates in pop culture to this day. So it's one of those
Right.
movies that if I did watch it, I feel like I'd recognize all the homages in the movie.
For sure. Yeah. You've seen it, and it's been played to enough and respected enough and made fun of enough, everything.
Mm-hmm.
The parodies of it exist in the culture. But also, you're not like, your parents didn't grow up with Shaft.
Yeah, that's right.
Right. So it's almost like a different rite of passage. But I do think even if you're first generation, second generation, but you are Black in America, then we should have still a period of time where there's like things you should watch, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
like, oh yeah, you're from another country, your parents you're out here.
Mm-hmm.
When you're hit like 18, it's like these are the Black movies that you need to watch. Like
Yeah.
Friday, Shaft, The Wiz.
Waiting to Exhale. I feel like that's referenced a lot.
Waiting to Exhale. Yeah, you should definitely
Maybe.
have to watch that. Like an old Sidney Poitier, Guess Who's Coming to Dinner or
Guess Who's
something.
Coming to Dinner. Yes.
An old Harry Belafonte.
Mm-hmm.
Shaft is on this list. Do the
It's
right thing. Like, it should be like we should put together a viewing list, required viewing list,
yeah.
that if you're, multi-generation Black American born and your parents were, then you have to watch them at like between 12 and 15, really young.
Yeah.
And if you're an immigrant or your parents were immigrants, then you have to watch it at like 18 after high school before you enter like the real world.
Yeah. It's an extra, it's like a Black citizenship test. You got to do a little extra to just. Oh, shoot, sorry. Let me close this.
Oh, that's the you got some noise outside. But yeah, doing that, it's kind of just a funny thing, but I think I think it would pay some kind of dividends or something where people are like, oh yeah, 12, 14, I watched Barbershop, you know, and
Barbershop.
then yeah, and then it's like we're all on the same page. Especially it's hard with the old movies. You have to mandate old movies. People don't watch them. They're like too far removed and they don't come on TV or anything. So like
Mm-hmm.
the only way for you to see Shaft is if there was a big screening like at the Hollywood Cemetery or something,
Right.
or if you made the effort to go get it yourself. But then for that to happen, it has to come up in conversation or something has to still prompt you to it, even if
Yes.
it's like a meme online or something. You're not just going to come to it randomly, you know.
Yeah, that's so true. Especially with all
That
the streaming now, you have to go look for the thing. Back in the
you
day
have to
when you watch TV, it would just be on.
not only do you have to go look for it because like the algorithms don't care that things existed before now. The algorithms are always pushing what's new, the newest thing.
Mm-hmm.
So even if you were on like one of the apps and you only watched old stuff, the algorithm would still be like, oh, hey, we got a new thing. Watch this new thing. You like this
Mm-hmm.
old thing? Watch this new thing. It wouldn't recommend more old things, you know?
That's a
That's
shame.
kind of that's a flaw in the system.
That is a flaw in the system. They got to fix that. And
So yeah, you have to see Shaft. You have to like make an appointment to see Shaft. But that's why we want to create this black movie syllabus for the
okay,
kids.
I love it. I'm down.
Uh Back to Dirty Harry here.
Oof.
What were your first what were your initial thoughts as we get into it?
My initial thoughts, because when we were thinking about what movie to see, I had just found a list of like action thriller movies to check out. And
Uh-huh.
I was watching some of Dirty Harry, and that's when I hit you, and I was like, "Oh my goodness!" Right away, the beginning of it, I'm like, "This is wild. This is such an insane movie that we got to talk about it." And it didn't stop being insane. It kept being like, there's so much to pull from this movie that I hope was conscious, but probably is not conscious. Like the little messages and meanings, and about the difference between a police and a criminal, and
Mm-hmm.
how it's their same mentality that could be on different sides of the law. Um,
Mm,
just like we were talking about, where it's like, oh man, this man might be a psychopath. Just the way he's
right.
recklessly shooting and killing people and living his life just like the other guy, except the other guy has a crazier face and is smiling a lot, right?
Yeah. Right.
Similar psychological buildup.
Yeah.
So, but also pretty cool movie. Like I understand why people's dads have this movie poster in their den,
Yeah. Yeah.
smoking.
It does make you well, it's like so many messages in this movie and like even just things that happen are very um it it begs it makes you think about the difference just from what 40 years 50 years 40 years yeah of what American culture thought about things to change over that time
Mhm.
because this movie just jump right into it like
Oh yeah.
this movie today is there like pretty it's pretty close to just a straight like MAGA movie you
Ooh.
know
Mhm.
like what is he championing what is he the hero of and how he acts without any regard for authority Dirty
Mhm.
Harry he'd be storming the Capitol
Guaranteed. He'd be leading
you
the
know
Tiki Torch rally. He'd be Except he wouldn't
Th-
even team up. He actually, it's scary. He'd be the one that's on the FBI watch list.
Totally. And I mean, how many? They kind of show him in a way where it's like in modern day, Dirty Harry is definitely, you know, as a police officer, is one of the ones you hear about on Twitter that trends for doing, you know,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I'm definitely dancing around it, but you know what he would have done and why he would
Truly.
be trending. And it'd be
Yes.
like police overreach and he was not going to be held accountable for these actions,
Mm-hmm.
you know, because this idea of being like, what is, he gets a guy on the ground, he's fired his shot. They had a little shootout. He does it like 2 or 3 times in the movie, and he's like, "Did I fire 5?" And it's a classic movie line. Classic
Yeah.
movie line. It's like considered one of the coolest movie lines, right? Did I
Mm-hmm.
fire 6 shots or 5? Well, do you feel lucky, punk? It's
Mm.
like, what, man? This isn't the time to be like playing
Truly.
sadistic riddle games.
Truly. It's
Like, put the cuffs on him or keep him
throw some
moving.
cuffs
Or
on him. You haven't seen him throw cuffs on anybody in this movie. Like
nah,
he's not doing anything by the book. And his his cool lines about the gun and the bullet will blow a hole through the back of your head and blah blah blah. If he wasn't on the side of supposed good, you'd be like, oh man, I'm scared. This is a wild, wild,
unhinged.
unhinged villain.
Yeah. So it even like the movie is. I wouldn't say the movie is necessarily obsessed with guns, but the opening shot is from the barrel, like right to the barrel of a gun.
Mm-hmm.
I saw that, I was like, my goodness, man, we've always been on this gun thing in this country. It's insane.
Always, always.
And then
It's
so like thinking about like this podcast and like the message of the podcast, it's like if it was a black movie, for example, that had
Mhm,
guns like this and was popular, even if just popular among the black community, that's
mhm,
what all the writings would be. It would be, oh, black community and guns, and they're obsessed with guns and they're killers and this and that. And then with
mhm,
this movie, it's like, this is what this podcast is looking at. Like, what is the message that what they're putting on screen is delivering to the world, or what is it reflecting about the world, which
mhm,
is white culture? And not that it's news that white culture is obsessed with guns, but then you see it displayed here in the art form in a movie.
mhm.
Who has the biggest gun, who, is the law and judge, jury, and executioner.
Mhm.
And in this case, that's very, very accurate for how he acts, how he sees himself.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. It the strangest part of this movie is that it's set in San Francisco. Like I don't get the
Mm,
reason for it being set there because this feels like a movie that can be. It feels like a white male fantasy that is every kind of Western movie. This feels like a Western, right? This
right.
man, there's an outlaw in town, and the man who's going to stop him is the guy who's the independent Lone Ranger dude, not
Right.
following the rules because there are no rules to this guy. Feels like a Western and a fantasy, just like you said, and like straight up NRA propaganda. It feels like, oh, the only way to stop a bad guy with a gun is to have a good guy with a cooler gun, right?
Yeah.
This
Yeah.
man will be able to shoot using his whatever Magnum gun that he's got incredible aim with somehow. I don't know how.
Right.
He's able to
Right.
beat a guy with like a sniper rifle and a distance shoot off. It's crazy.
Right. I'm glad you said that about Westerns. So here's the thing about Westerns.
Hmm.
Because people always say like superhero movies are the new Westerns, or they're like, eventually Westerns faded out, but Western isn't really a genre of movie. Western is a setting to me. So a Western movie, they were set in the West because that's how America was at a time. And even in like the 40s and 50s, there were still large parts of the country, very like unsettled, very rural, very like Western-esque. And that part of the that part of Americana had just ended, right? In the late 1800s or late 1800s or so. And that's when most of those movies are set. So, but the stories of Westerns just changed as time changed, as America became more quote unquote civilized or modernized. Westerns just became more cop movies, and cop movies became more like Westerns. And you could go back, and I mean, there were cop movies in the 20s, 30s too, and Westerns were just another version of that. It was just another setting. It was like,
Mm,
oh, we're not set in New York, we're set in, at the time, what you consider middle America, or, that kind of thing.
mhm,
So they'd have a Western in Oklahoma or on the plains and any part of the country. And then they'd have the cop stuff would be set in cities, New York,
mhm.
Chicago, LA, and then San Francisco. Now, the thing about San Francisco at the time is that it was just a good place to shoot. It's great terrain because it's like hilly and everything looks kind of beautiful and different. And it was just like a very popular place and a cheap place people could shoot outside of LA to give something a feel, a different feel.
Mhm.
Back at this time, especially 71, this was just like kind of early era of independent cinema.
Mm.
So there wasn't a whole ton of location shoots at this time. So they had to go where crew was, where people knew what they were doing. And also the cast and crew is probably living in LA. So somewhere that they could get to easily. They weren't flying people out like that. You weren't flying first class to shoot in Atlanta or
Right,
Vancouver or something in 71. This was a
right.
movie made for $4 million, which again, 71, 4 million was more than it is now, but it's not like it was a big budget
Sure.
blowout. We have all the money in the world. So San Francisco is somewhere they could shoot for cheap. It was someplace that was really popular at the time. George Lucas was doing a lot of work for Coppola. I think is from up there, and he did a lot of his stuff up there,
Mhm.
and uh, quite a few other independent films and smaller films that are like popular and in film history now were shot in San Francisco. And this movie, The Killer, is based on the real life Zodiac killer, which was in San Francisco. And
Interesting.
they made that movie Zodiac, obviously with David Fincher, is about that killer. So those are the parallels there. And like
Right.
westerns are really just another form of instead of calling it a cop movie, it's like an author a just who I don't know what I want to call it, but it's something about
Mm.
authority and
Yeah.
a vision of criminals, and that's the same thing. It's like a black and white, good and evil type of thing.
Yes. Good and evil.
It goes from westerns to cops to detectives to military movies to superhero movies.
Mhm.
They have different genre specifics. Like a western is going to have the scenery, and they're going to be riding horses, and they're going to have 6 shooters on their hip.
Mhm.
And cops instead are going to have, generally, except for this one because he's kind of a western character in a cop movie, but they're going
Mhm.
to have the 9 millimeters, and they're going to have suits.
Right.
They're going to have to drive around and question a bunch of people. And in the superhero movies, they have costumes and different kind of projectile weapons, but they're really so similar.
Wow, they're cut from the same kind of good, bad cloth of
Yeah,
just change up the external things, but it's still a similar kind of story. Uh,
exactly.
this movie was fascinating. We've already said that he's a psychopath, Dirty Harry, right? But
Right.
it's fascinating that they give no kind of, sure, there's good and evil. It's easy to see Harry as evil if you don't put him next to something more evil. And so that's why they put him next to whoever this crazy guy is. And Harry and the bad guy both have no good justification for the way they're just shooting people and killing people randomly. Right.
Right.
Bad guy
Right.
was like, I want money. right? But that's not a justification for just shooting random people. The
Right.
justification for kidnapping and holding ransom. And Harry's just shooting people in the street, right? And
Right.
his justification is nothing. It's got to be done.
Yeah.
I
I
love
guess
that.
his justification is that it's criminals, what they're calling criminals. You know, he foils a bank robbery in like the second major set piece. And then there's a black guy on the ground, right? And he gives his line about how many bullets have I used. But it was like, oh, that guy's robbing a bank. So anything that happens to him is justified, you know?
Right.
And I think that's a cultural message that comes out a lot. And it's stronger now, even than it was maybe in 71,
Mm.
especially if you're a
Ooh,
black person that committed a
especially if you're,
crime,
yes.
especially if you're an immigrant, or more specifically, an immigrant from south of us, Mexico, South America.
Hmm.
And definitely, I think still, but definitely in the 2000, early 2000s, if you were Muslim or if you had a hijab or a scarf or anything on, it was like, whatever happens to you, you're kind of predetermined to be a criminal, right?
Yes. Yes.
So
Yes.
it's already like, they're already weary. And, you know, so even if you are a black kid, it
Hmm.
gets into an altercation and you're like, weren't really doing anything, there's still the mentality and the response would be like, they deserved it. He deserved it. She deserved it,
Always. Yeah.
you
Always
know?
looking for something.
And if you have done anything, it's even slightly questionable, not even, you know, less than a misdemeanor, something that you just would get away with a hand slap on,
Hmm.
still the mentality is, oh, this kid got shot. He deserved it.
Hmm.
There is nothing that could have bad enough that could have happened that they wouldn't be like, you got what you had coming, you know?
Hmm. Hmm.
And that's a hard thing to really just to live with, and to have to be around and to be in the environment that is that punitive against you just for your
Hmm.
existence.
Yeah. Yeah. It's it's telling you like you're not meant to be here, you
Yeah.
know? That's the message of it all. It's like, oh, you're not meant to be here. Whatever you do
Mm,
can be seen as a crime. And so whatever
mm,
happens to you is justified.
right.
So, well, what was he wearing when he got randomly killed
Exactly.
by, you know,
Exactly.
law
It,
enforcement or whoever else? Well,
it-
it can't be the guy with the gun's fault. He killed him.
right.
It's got to. Yeah, I mean, there's got to be something. Oh, that's right. In middle
Yeah.
school, he did steal.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. This movie
And
feels like that for sure.
yeah. So it's very like reflects like the white majority opinion on criminals and criminals and crime being so black and white, not racially, but like literally like good or bad. And if you committed a crime, then you're a criminal. And really like any arrest or any arrest or jail term,
Hmm.
especially felony level, is they're all life sentences, is what
Right.
people have to realize about how we treat prisoners. Like you might only do, not only do, but you might do whatever sentence is in jail, 5 years, 10 years, whatever.
Hmm.
But that crime is part of your life forever. And with
Yep.
how harshly we judge criminals, like now you can't get an apartment, credit, a
Hmm.
job,
Hmm.
no matter how reformed
Yeah.
you are according to the system. Like you can go through all the systems reformations, you still have something on your permanent record. And all these things are made up things. Like, let's be honest about that.
Hmm.
When, you know, the line between criminal and non-criminal is also really non-existent, you know?
Hmm.
People cross that line all the time, but it's about who is granted leniency and who is given, you know, multiple chances.
Hmm.
And these are the things that really stand out about America. And that this movie really ain't, it's not even about that. Like, it's not like he's chasing like a black kid or there's a black kid in jail or anything like that. But you see the mentality of the cop and the cops toward criminals. Like, when Dirty Harry shoots somebody, he barely gets reprimanded and immediately gets put on the next high profile case,
Right away.
you know.
Mm-hmm.
And his answer to all of it is like what's now a classic cop movie trope, and was at the time, but even more so now, where it's like, oh, they won't let me investigate the way I want to. I'll turn in my badge and just go solo and vigilante it. And it's like,
Yep.
you know, so in this movie, they justify it because, oh, there's a serial killer and nobody can catch him. And he plays the media against them and yada, yada. So this guy is so evil that you have to step outside of the normal rules,
Yes.
which is just Batman also.
That's so true. That's Superman. That's superheroes.
You
It's
know,
like,
it's all superheroes.
yep.
But you have to step outside of the normal rules to catch them. And, you know, it's almost like you have to unleash an animal just as dangerous as the one you're hunting to catch them.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah, that's well said. That's so true. And it goes back to that point of the same psychology can often be found in both sides of the law, right? Where
Right.
the person, a good guy with a gun and a bad guy with a gun, they could be operating from the same place.
And and I think that's overblown too. I think that's part of the fantasy too, is like you met your match. That's the only person
Mhm.
that could catch this guy because you got to be such a badass. And
Right,
it's me and him mano a mano. But
right.
it in reality, you know, a half dozen good cops should have been able to catch this guy. And, you know,
Yes, that's so true. That's so true.
you know, he was leaving some notes, but it wasn't like,
No, he wasn't.
you know, it
Yeah.
wasn't like the movie Seven. Remember the movie Seven, where the guy
Mhm.
was like had it all planned out and all yada yada
No.
like
Yeah.
that. This guy was kind of, I mean, he had some notes, but he was flying by the seat of his pants. He was unhinged.
Truly. They had the most like Looney Tune. The cops had the most Looney Tune plans, and they would still run into the guy. Like they'd be
Yeah,
like, "Hey, you know, we'll lock some doors on some roofs. He's only going to go to a roof with the door unlocked. Oh, there he is. We see him with the helicopter.
got
Damn,
him, got
damn,
him.
he got him, but he
He
got
got away,
away."
got away somehow.
You mean he asked Dirty Harry's special detective skills is that he asked after shooting the bad guy, he went to the nearest hospital where the bad guy probably limped to and was like, "Have you
Right.
seen this guy?" And the doctor was like,
Yeah.
"Yes." And he's like, "Where does he live?" And the doctor told him where he lived. That's like the most
Right.
genius detective plan. It's really just showing like, oh man, I don't really, he supposedly works outside of the law, but it just seemed like a slammed police force that didn't have enough time to or resources to investigate this thing.
So that's the criticism too that makes this even more like a really today more of a right wing movie, which is like government failure. You know, everybody that works for the system or for the government is inept and
Mm-hmm.
you know, they're cowards hamstrung by bureaucracy, that you need a real rebel to, it's the only way to get things done, you know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's how they justify things like storming the Capitol and things, because
True.
they're saying
Yeah.
this doesn't work because, you know, the government is doing too much and we all got to be dirty Harrys to make the world better. It's like,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
it's such an extreme point of view.
Yeah.
But I will say that like everybody, like loving an outlaw is not an American thing. That's just, there's just a human quality about that, where
Hmm.
any culture you read their stories, it's like there's gonna be an outlaw character or somebody that doesn't adhere to the system. And
Mm.
you know, I think they come about it different ways, but that in itself is not unique.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think the way Dirty Harry is characterized
Mm-hmm.
is what brings the specificity of Americanness to it. Which brings me to the question, like, what do you think of Clint Eastwood here?
Hmm. Clint Eastwood being the character
The actor
is,
as the character, or yeah, it's the whole
yeah,
his whole package here.
yeah. I feel like this is just, this goes right up his alley in terms of politics and philosophy. Like the way he embodied this character so well, it feels so perfect for him because he is a famous conservative in a very liberal space. And so
Right.
for him to be this kind of uh, gun-toting, breaks the rules, is conservative, doesn't trust his Mexican partner, and has some racist jokes to tell him. For him to
Right.
be that kind of guy in San Francisco, which is famously a liberal space, I'm like, oh, this feels like what it just pulled from his life. Like he's just what he's pulled from his imagination, just walking around with a gun, being like, I think I see someone who's black and he's sitting in front of a bank for too long. All right, let me figure this out real quick. Oh, see, I knew it. I called it. I feel like it's just
Yeah.
playing into his fantasy.
For me, even watching old Clint Eastwood, like I don't love watching Clint Eastwood. He you know, his face has a smugness to it that I do not like,
Mm-hmm.
and he really seems like a really skinny creepo to me.
Right.
And creepo's not a word I use a lot, you know. So
Yeah, I've never heard you use that word. This is big.
he just seems creepy to me.
Yes.
Um, but I guess
Yes.
he had a little he had the swagger, and he does have a menacing kind of glare, and I think that adds to this like stoic character.
Yeah. Yeah.
But he's definitely a one of a kind. Like he's not a classic good looking Hollywood guy,
No.
you know, and he's
Yeah.
not very traditionally charismatic,
No.
you know.
No.
But obviously he had something that people gravitated towards, something that, you know, I think there's a period of Clint Eastwood that I can stand, which is really like the 90s Unforgiven Clint Eastwood.
Oh, right.
But old and young Clint Eastwood, I'm like, man, get this guy's giving me the creeps, man. I don't want to see him like that.
Yeah, he is a creep. He's creepy in this movie, and all of his acting is like the strong, silent type.
Yeah.
That's his whole range. It's just strong and quiet.
Whenever he makes a little slide joke or comment, you know, like the racist comments to the criminals or his partner,
Mhm.
I'm always like, man, I want to punch this dude, man. Like just the way he does it, the smugness is like so
Mhm.
something I've encountered so much in real life. It's like the worst kind of
Right.
to experience.
Yeah, yeah. It's a personality type
Yeah.
that it can exist without getting punched in the face because they have a gun. You know what I mean?
And even his totally, and even his humor, I don't really feel like he has a sense of humor, even though he's make the character's making jokes and stuff. It's like
Hmm.
you don't seem like a person that laughs to me, or that your laughs are about the thing everybody else is laughing about. It's like in his mind, to me, he either made it a lot dirtier or a lot bloodier, whatever the joke is,
Right.
in a way
Right.
that then makes it not funny, you know?
Yes. Yeah. When you're in a big group and he's there and everyone's laughing, then you hear his kind of laugh. You go, "Oh shoot, no, what's he
Because you know
laughing
he's
about?"
laughing like this. He's like, everybody else is cracking up, and he goes, and it's like delayed a second or two late because you know he thought about something else more messed up
Yeah, something
that made it
darker.
funny to him. Yeah.
Yeah, and you're like, "Oh no, we got him on the wrong side." Oh, what did I
Yeah.
say? Damn, damn, I
If
made
he's
Clint
laughing,
laugh.
I know I made the wrong joke.
I made the
The wrong
horrible joke.
introduction.
Oh.
Then you go full Chappelle. I got to get to Africa. Clint
You got-
Eastwood laughed at my joke.
That's so true. You got to get out of there. Now I agree that that personality type is one that I've encountered before where I'm like, ah, man,
Yeah.
very strange. I think he empowers that type of person through these movies where they go, oh, I'm not good with people, but they're going to respect me. and
By force.
by force, and I can get involved in whatever I need. The early scene where he's at the bank, right?
Right.
And he tells he's at the cafe across the street. He tells the server, "Hey, is that guy in the car across the bank still there?
Yeah.
Black dude in a car." Yes, of course he's there. Okay, call the cops, let them know. I think there's a bank robbery happening. He's being cool as hell, just eating. Then he hears the alarm. He goes outside. He does the famous line. He's shooting everything. I feel like that's scene alone is the birth of Karen behavior. It where people who watch that go, okay, I'm a Karen because I think I can be involved in everything.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna be right. I'm gonna be right no matter what. So I have a right to go over there, get in someone's face, disturb them because
Wow.
I know the rules. This
There,
person's breaking them.
man, totally. We'll see in the movie, Harry is gonna have he's Dirty Harry because he gets all the dirtiest jobs. They say that like make that joke like 3 times.
Yeah, too many times. Yep.
But it's a written movie. This is the separation between Karen and Harry. It's a written movie, and he's a top level like detective. So he has a sixth sense for detecting when something isn't right. But the message that gives is that you could be like that too.
Yes.
But this guy, especially if he is a psychopath, like as we're saying, then maybe he would notice when things are off in a way that any other human can't. Because he's clued in to when people are doing bad things. Like that's the whole character. It's almost a Sherlock Holmesian type of thing, but for detecting when other people are doing bad.
Right.
But when you watch it, it's not presented as some like learned behavior or superpower or practice thing. You just see him as a cop and he just looks and I got it. So as a human just watching it, you're like, if I see a black guy outside of a bank,
Yep.
I can detect it as well. I got it.
I
I'm just
know.
like dirty. Anybody can do this. And it's like, no, the point is he's uniquely gifted either through circumstance or just personality.
Right. And through experience and all that. But
Through
that's so true.
experience, yeah.
You get so encouraged. I'd watch that if I was someone who was like, man, disenfranchised or whatever. Not even disenfranchised. If I felt disenfranchised, I'd be like,
Yeah.
I could be like him. If something's tickling, if there's a tingle up my neck and it has to do with a black person, I'm probably right. And so I'm gonna go over there.
And the things that make the average person hair stand up on the back of the neck could be anything. Like we're not trained to scope out danger, and especially not trying to make it a sexist thing, but women can even react even faster to danger. They're programmed to react faster. So sometimes in a situation like what we're talking about, not trying to say condemn anybody, but in some situations like that, it's like your receptors are higher because you're more vulnerable in society, or because of your past trauma or something. But that doesn't mean everything you see are things that should be reported, and people don't know how to discern the differences. Right.
100%. 100%. And when the cops, I saw something, I don't remember where it was. It was like some town had put a notice out and was requesting people to stop calling the police on just black people.
Yeah.
Period. Just black people, just doing nothing without any kind of proof that something's going on.
Right.
I think that that probably encourages them to be even more vigilante-like, where they're going, okay, well, the system's not going to do something about this.
You got to get my gun, keep it on me.
Keep it on me. They're going to listen because I deserve to be heard. And if anything pops off, I'm ready to pop off.
The cops can't do the job, so we're going to do it.
Let me go handle this.
I did see it was like a TikTok, but it was a Guy's Real interview. he was talking to, it was a obviously a right wing dude and a liberal, and I think the dude was, I think, being interviewed, but or it was like a debate, and at one point he said he made a reference to Batman in his argument as if it was valid or real,
Yeah.
and it's like no, nobody's allowing Batman to run around and stop crime. That's a that's a comic book, my guy. It's a comic book, cartoon, or movie.
Mhm.
That's not something that's really happening. You can't use
Mhm.
that as a justification
Right.
for even a messed up attitude about reality, because
Right.
it's not a
It's
real thing. But then, we did a Batman movie before, but it begs a question. Also in this movie, um, when there are black people, and it's actually kind of a diverse cast in a way, but it's
mm,
always about black people, like either criminals,
mhm.
or a thing a lot of white movies do, especially at this time, is like, oh, they go to the like a bus driver will be black, or any kind of worker
Right.
will be black, or he get help from like a black nurse or something, you
Mhm.
know, and
Mhm.
it's like, oh, the regular working people are black,
Mhm.
and they kind of get in his way at a time, or and of
Right.
course Scorpio kills a black kid at one point in the middle of the
Mhm.
movie. Um, and that kind of, I mean, it makes Harry a little mad, but it kind of just happens. And then,
Right.
but the
But
best part of this movie, I thought, was when he was doing the phone call relay at the payphones.
oh yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
and the killer was like, to kind of make sure he wasn't being tracked, and it was just one cop. He would call a payphone. Harry would have to be there, and he would be like, "Okay, now go to this payphone, pick it up before the third ring." And that's a thing that has kind of become a trope that's been used in a bunch of movies since.
Mhm.
Uh, as a way for somebody that's holding a hostage to check the person that's supposed to do the exchange, to make sure that there's not a bunch of cops with them, and to kind of throw them off the scent. But it always
Mhm.
ends with like, there's always one last phone call. It's like, oh, you must be near that last phone call. It's not really
Yeah.
that clever of a thing, but
No. No, definitely not. I tried to tally I was trying to guess what this movie thought of black people. And so I tried to tally like, all right, criminal black person to start with, the first black person we see. Mind you, the first word we see before we see any people of color is the N word. It's dropped hard in that,
right.
just right away. I'm going to kill this and a priest. And you're like,
Yeah.
okay, okay. Right away,
It's
we
like
hear that.
that's where we're starting.
Yeah, we're
Yeah.
starting there. And first black dude was a bank robber. Second black dude was like the cop or nurse helping him out. And then everything from there was like a innocent victim kid who gets killed, and
Mm-hmm.
then random black dude who was beating the hell out of the bad guy in order to make him look worse so the bad guy could like go to the
Right.
press.
He hired a black dude
Yes.
to beat him up. The killer did hired a black dude to beat him up so he would look like a victim of police brutality.
Yes. Incredible, incredible. Like I don't even know what the message is behind that. That's just incredible. And
Because he could have hired anybody to beat him up within the world of a movie and the creator's imagination.
truly,
But they were like, yeah, get a black
let's just get
thug
a black.
guy.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'll say that actor did a great job in that role. He was kind of cool. He was
He
like, he
was.
did it. He got a couple extra punches in, which I think is almost a way of being like putting black revenge in movies that a lot of white movies do. To have
Mm,
a black guy get an extra punch in or get an extra thing and
right.
say a slick line after, and it's like, yeah, black people aren't so they're gonna get something good. It's like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. This is our comeuppance. It's not my movie, but you know what? I,
yeah.
I had a little bit of a say, and then they're
I'm a
out.
friend of the writers and directors. We're friends of blacks. Look, he got an extra punch in when he was hired to beat this white guy up to frame the police.
Mm-hmm. Frame the
Uh,
police.
so this movie has a lot, just a craziness, and
It's mad.
Also I realized we mentioned Dirty Harry. That's the movie we did, but for Shaft, starring
Mhm.
Richard Roundtree, just wanted to say the name so people know Richard Roundtree, and The Shaft was directed by Gordon Parks. This was directed by Don Siegel.
Hmm.
Had a few writers, including his husband and wife team that wrote the original draft, and it went through a lot of changes
Hmm.
to become Dirty Harry. And it's really a cinema classic, but I think is one worth watching to get a idea like this is what America is still like, and this is what
Hmm.
America was like in the 70s and 71.
Yeah.
And
And
I think it gives a good screenshot of like the attitudes of America.
right. Yeah, truly. Where we can watch it now with a new lens and go, oh, this feels horrible and wrong. But the
Mm-hmm.
reason it was so popular, the scary reason it was so popular is people saw him as a hero.
And realizing that this movie could still get made today and have an audience,
Really.
and people would be like, man, Dirty Harry's such a badass man, and you're like, psychopath, and they're like, no, man, that's how you got to do it, and that's how people
Hmm.
feel.
Yeah, yeah. He had a wife. And it's like that's not enough to explain why he's
Oh,
killing people.
yeah, he had a dead wife, which is
He had
another trope we'll get
mhm.
into in a movie where it's bigger in the movie, but the dead wife, dead mom trope of movies is so intense
Mhm.
and used as a justification for so much,
So much.
in a way that's outsized from reality, I think,
Right,
especially the realities of the people that experience it.
right.
You know, 'cause it'll be like suburban people or rich people or people doing all right. Like, I got a dead, my mom died when it's like,
Hmm.
man, we're using that in a way that's also kind of speaks volumes from the culture,
Yeah, yeah.
you know, and it's a way
Right.
to kind of inject the femininity into a movie without using actual women in the movie. Because this movie had no other story.
Ooh, none.
He had no life outside of being a cop. Nobody else really did, except for when his partner was like, I can't be a cop anymore. I'm going to go be a teacher. And his wife was there with him.
Right.
Otherwise, there was no semblance of a world outside of what was happening with Dirty Harry as a cop. That's
Yeah.
really the only thing that keeps this movie, that would hurt this movie today. Even like John Wick
Hmm.
would develop a bit of a story and flashback to the dead wife a little more,
Hmm.
or at least have him caring about it. Dirty Harry wasn't like,
Right.
even in Lethal Weapon, where I think he had like a similar situation, it was like always on his mind. It was like the thing that drove him. But this one, it's just like
Yeah.
something that happened,
Yeah,
in the
that's
past.
tossed away. Like that doesn't justify anything. It's not even related
Yeah,
to his job. Why she died? We don't have no
yeah,
idea.
we don't have any idea. So that's a crazy thing.
Yeah, if it weren't for the wife that they mentioned, I'm like, Dirty Harry is just like Dirty Harry is Taxi Driver, except as a cop, right?
Yeah,
Just a
yeah.
man who's like obsessed and potentially, you know, incel or like any of those things that we see now that could be
Mhm.
him. But they're like, he had a wife. And I'm like, how was that relationship for real? Let's be honest.
Right. And if this movie were made now, he would almost certainly like maybe not have a dead wife, but instead have a daughter, and a wife and a daughter live somewhere else in town or something.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's like his motivation, or he's sad because he can't be with his daughter or something. And they would be
Yeah.
like, that movie had so much heart. But I will say that this movie was acknowledged at the time as controversial. It was nominated for Academy Awards, which seems crazy now because the version of this made today would not be an Academy Award
Oh, yeah, definitely not.
nominated movie, you know?
No, for
But
sure.
this is like has a place of cinema history, but people protested it because, how it deals with police brutality and victims' rights and the nature of law enforcement. I'm reading from Wikipedia.
Mm.
They had banners which read Dirty Harry is a rotten pig. The guy that played the killer would receive death threat. Sending a death threat is the dumbest
That's
thing to me, but
ridiculous. Yeah.
let's talk about that later. And a lot of critics, I think even some that liked it were like, this is Robert Ebert denounced the movie's moral position as fascist, even though they gave it, even though they gave it like 3 out of 4 stars, they still acknowledge that like
Right.
it's an insane personalization of this kind of mentality.
Oh, 100%.
Let's get into casting. I think we gave Dirty Harry enough airtime.
Yeah, so true.
Let's cast a couple roles and
Yeah. How many did you do? Because I only did 3.
I really only thought about 2 of them, Harry and the killer. Everything else seemed
So small.
so interchangeable, you know?
Yeah, true. I just added Chico Gonzalez,
The partner.
the partner.
Yeah. Who'd
What
you
a
have
funny.
for Dirty Harry?
So, man, I was struggling trying to find a Dirty Harry.
Yeah.
And I have one guy. I'm just going to go with pod favorite. I have 2 people. One guy is no longer with us, but if we shot back in time, we could get him. First, I'm going to go pod favorite Mahershala Ali.
Okay, I'm gonna pause you right there because that's not who I went with, but definitely like he has a face to be like this real, like a real stoic, cold killer
Mhm.
type.
Mhm.
So that is a great choice. Who else you got?
For the same role, just pass
Yeah.
on.
Yeah, who?
I went to Michael K. Williams.
Oh yeah, man, yeah, he would have been interesting.
Yeah, I
He
think
could
it
have
would have
done it.
been very interesting.
I went with Aldous Hodge.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
I
I think he's. I think it was more just a desire to be like, man, it's time for Aldous to have like that really lead starring role.
Mhm.
And obviously, we're not making a real movie here, but I would like to see him do something like this. But also, it begs the question of what would a black Dirty Harry look like? Because like Shaft
Mm,
was never a cop. Shaft was a detective.
right.
And I don't think the modern Shafts have the same kind of tone or seriousness that these movies had in the 70s.
Mhm.
But to say like a black cop who plays outside the rules in a serious movie, not like Eddie Murphy movies where they're ostensibly comedies, and it's just Eddie's personality, but like a hard
Sure.
as nails, black, psychopath cop. I don't know what that would look like.
Right.
That might not get made. We'll just say that.
No. And he would definitely have to be working super outside the system
Yeah.
where I mean, it would be interesting, but I don't know. You're right. It'd be very interesting. I think Aldous Hodge would be incredible.
Yeah.
It's his time.
Uh, who else did you have? What other roles? Who else did you have?
I did the Chico Gonzalez role. I'll just say that right away, just because for Chico Gonzalez, and I picked a Henry Golding, um, I believe Asian American actor, if not just
Oh
uh,
yeah. Crazy Rich Asians. Yeah.
yeah. I picked him because I'm like,
Nice.
man, I miss those Asian black movies. I miss them.
The team ups.
The
Yeah.
team ups, man. We'd boost his role for sure in the rewrite.
Yeah. Make him actually like a relevant character.
Yeah, make him a character for real.
He he might be too hot, but we'll just keep it moving. We'll see how it works.
Yeah, you're probably right. We'll make it a day,
Uh
a couple days. It'll be good.
yeah, we gotta make him shave his head or something so he's just, a little less hot.
Truly.
And then you had the killer.
Yeah, for the killer. I mean, the only distinguishing thing about the killer in my brain is just that he's got a wild face, and so I
Mhm.
went with comedian DC Young Fly.
Oh wow.
You know him?
That could be interesting with his personality. I went with Kevin Hart.
Okay.
I want to unleash Kevin Hart in like a serious role as a psycho killer.
Ooh, nice.
But DC Young Fly, that's interesting too. So it's good casting. Yeah, that's Dirty Harry. That's what I have to say about Dirty Harry.
Yeah, I think we tapped out on
Um,
Dirty Harry.
yeah, if you want to watch it, watch it. It's insane, and you'll be like, "What is going on?"
Mm-hmm.
But it is a piece of cinema history. I would also say watch Shaft. I would say watch Shaft more importantly, Shaft is more important than Dirty Harry. I'm gonna say that and just let that hang out there.
And put it out there. Yeah.
In
Watch Shaft.
in every respect, for cinema history, cultural history, cultural relevance. I think over time, Shaft has proven more relevant. That's what I'm gonna say. Hot take.
Ooh, put it out there.
Put it out
And
there.
any Dirty Harry fans, no offense, we're good. We don't want the heat. We don't want the smoke.
I mean, I'm not gonna argue about it. That's the way it
Definitely
is.
not. Definitely not.
So that's our time. Yeah, good one. Again, catch us. Catch me on socials at Bear Cove. You can catch them on at UCB Theater.
Yep.
What's your team name again? People can look that up.
Yeah, the team name is Leroy. I perform with them every month at the UCB
Just
Theater.
LEROY, or is it spelled in a funny way?
No. We saved the
Just
funny
like
for
the
the
typical.
stage. Yeah.
Right on.
LEROY. Yeah, come check us out. I perform multiple times at the theater with like Benetton and Elefante. Yeah.
He's there all the time.
Mhm.
And we'll be back in a week or so with another movie. Thanks. Peace.
Peace.